Hi guys, I'm the Plant Gals, and I am really excited to film this video, although I will say I'm a little bit nervous. I have not felt good this week, so my voice is probably going to sound terrible, and I also probably look terrible, so forget about all that. And yeah, the video title of this I haven't 100% decided on while I'm filming it, but I know it's probably going to be clickbaity, and on top of that, I would like to say that I hope that when I click on clickbaity videos on YouTube that they actually are honest about what they're gonna say and that they are gonna spill the tea. And I'm gonna do that because I just need a talking video to do that's gonna be easy enough for me to edit. So today, let's talk about how you're getting scammed in the houseplant community. And that's a big title, that's a big thing to just throw out there. How you're gonna get scammed. And this is not just online, this is how you're getting scammed by local sellers, by anybody really. You can get scammed in so many different ways. And just in general, how to be a smart consumer when you're in any hobby, but this pertains specifically to houseplants for sure. Because any hobby, people get in, they say, I'm gonna make some money and I don't care how I do it. And you're gonna get some interesting issues pop up for you. So, without further ado, I'm gonna get into it. And I'm actually not gonna wait till the end to say the spiciest tea that I have, although I do have some good stuff throughout the whole video. But I just wanna get your attention right from the beginning. So, right off the start, I'm gonna start with import flipping, which is probably my favorite scam. When I say favorite, my least favorite scam, because it takes advantage of the newest people in the hobby, I would say. I mean, all of these, if you're newer to the hobby, you're gonna be more susceptible to, but this is a big one. So what is import flipping? Okay, buying imported plants is fine. I've bought lots of imported plants. I know lots of people that have bought imported plants. There are amazing importers. I have nothing against imported plants. However, there are some groups of people who own businesses or own pop-ups or do markets or have online shops where it's kind of the same, you can think of it as like drop shipping in a way, where they buy something from overseas that is cheaper over there because imported plants are much cheaper, and they resell them, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with a business selling plants that they have imported. However, the problem comes with what imported plants actually are. So Ecuagenera is an amazing company to import from. I own several plants from them. They're beautiful, they're great. There's a ton of places that I've imported from, but Ecuagenera is one of the major ones. They come from South America, and I live in beautiful Canada, and Canada does not have the same weather as South America. The weather in South America is extremely humid, it's extremely hot. A lot of these plants there are grown outside, and they are beautiful and happy. And when they come in, they look beautiful when they come in fresh off the plane from wherever hot, humid, beautiful climate they're coming in from. But these plants are not prepared for the not so hot, not so humid, not so beautiful climate they're coming into, such as Canada, Alberta for me, which is very, very dry. And a lot of the time, these are plants like anthurium, which on a good day like high humidity. So they're gonna get shocked. And it'll take them sometimes up to a couple weeks where they start looking sad. And actually, some of the plants that I got in my last video will probably start looking sad in the next couple weeks. And so you have to do something called acclimating them. And acclimating them can be expensive for growers. It takes a lot of work. And a lot of places will import plants, and because they look so good fresh off the plane from South America or East Asia or wherever they're coming from, they just put them up for sale. And they put them up for sale way too quickly. These plants are not acclimated, they're not ready to live in your home, they are not happy, and you're gonna get the plant, and within a week or two of you getting it, you're gonna be like, what is happening to my plant? Because if you don't know what import shock looks like, you're not gonna know. You're gonna think it's pests, you're gonna think it's overwatering, underwatering. It's not. It's just not happy because it's acclimating to the new environment. And also a lot of the time, it's easy to kill plants when they're acclimating. Acclimating has to be done slowly. It has to be done where you kind of keep the humidity and the light and the temperature similar to when it came in, and you slowly bring it down. And if your goal is to get it as just a regular house plant that you can keep in your house, that has to be done very slowly. So a lot of people will buy these import plants, think that they are acclimated to our Canadian climate, and they will put them in their house and their plant will die. So that, I think, is one of the biggest types of scams. I have been to local shops in several different cities that do this. It's sleazy and I don't like it. And it's just, if there's nothing wrong with selling imported plants secondhand. There's nothing wrong with selling imported plants firsthand. There's nothing wrong with buying imported plants. But when you buy imported plants, you need to know, is this a plant that I need to acclimate? Because if it needs to be acclimated, it might die if it isn't acclimated, or it's gonna look terrible. So you need to know what you're getting. And if sellers aren't honest about the state of the plant that you're buying, and it looks beautiful because it just came from Ecuador, but this isn't Ecuador, then it's not beautiful because they made it beautiful or kept it beautiful or is their prop. And also, I just wanted to say, like, specifically too, there are a lot of plant shops that will get plants in boxes or whatever and put them out the same day. That is different than import flipping. Imports are different because they need to be acclimated. There's a lot of plant shops you'll see, they'll get a box open and they'll put it right onto the shelf, or they'll water them first and pest treat them and put them on the shelf within a couple of days. Those plants do not need to be acclimated, 9 times out of 10. And they're not imports. They're usually from local places and local greenhouses that have shipped them, and they're just coming here and they can go on the shelves. Those are fine. I would say like the red flag plants for import plants are rare hoya and rare anthurium and philodendron. Those are your big red flag plants. And if you're seeing these big hoya, okay, especially if they have not been planted or they look like they've been hastily planted. If they are still wrapped in moss and the seller is not saying that they have been imported, they've probably been imported. And it's okay to ask too. Like, there's nothing wrong with going, hey, did you import these plants? And they'll be honest. They'll say, yeah, I imported these plants. You can just say, hey, when? Or how long do I need to acclimate this for? Like, ask questions. Don't just assume that somebody is import flipping because one of the red flags that I mentioned you see. Ask. Be like, hey, did you import this? When did you import this? Do I need to acclimate this? Or like, what's the situation here? And then move on from there. But yes, some people do purposely try to hide the fact that they have imported plants and are selling them, and it's sketchy. So try to avoid that and you will save a lot of money. This next one is a really quick one. I will try to find some little things to pop in of what I'm talking about. But you know, you're on Instagram and you're on like your Plantstagram and they are like, you get these ads that are showing plants, like sick plants, and they'll take a picture of them and it'll tell you what's wrong with them. And like, you need to add a cup of coffee and 3 tablespoons of salt and your plant will be fine. That's obviously a scam, I'm sorry. And especially the ones where you have to pay money, or any app. Most of the apps that can identify plants cannot identify plants well. Some of them are really good at like outdoor local plants and stuff, but they're terrible at house plants. And especially at like the differences, like if you want to know your Adansonii from an Esquilito, from an Obliqua, from like a regular Deliciosa, it's not gonna know. I had one once because I just wanted to see, I wanted to test it out. And like everything I pointed it at was a heartleaf philodendron. So like if it's free, I guess it can't really be a scam, but I just want to say that that is something that is primarily not reliable or a reliable source of plant information. And anything that tells you to add things to your plants that really aren't like fertilizer. Hydrogen peroxide is something you'll hear. That is something you can add to your plants to help with root rot and sometimes infestation. But if it's like add coffee, add this. Oh, another thing that actually isn't a scam that I will say is you can treat fungal infections with cinnamon. I've done this before in Hoya. So that's not a scam. But some of the things that they say to add are just silly, and don't do that. Don't get those apps, and definitely don't pay for a membership for those apps at all. This is another complicated one like import flipping, which is beneficial insects. Now, like I said, buying imported plants is totally fine, as long as you know what you're getting yourself into. And I feel like the way that beneficial insects are advertised sometimes can be misleading. So, and they're also expensive. So if you're gonna be buying beneficial insects, there's some important things you need to know. First of all, you need to make sure that you're buying the right type of beneficial insects for your collection. Some need high humidity, some need low humidity, some only live for 2 weeks. In fact, most only live 2 weeks to a month, and you have to replace them quite often. Some you can only stick like a couple in your cabinet and that'll be fine. Some you have to stick on every plant. Some will get all over your house, some won't. And they do different things. They're bugs, you know, they perform different jobs just like people or any other animal. They have different diets, there's different things that they eat. But the number one thing, and I get asked this question a lot in my club, is I get people who have infestations of spider mites or mealybugs or anything like that. And I always get asked, there's somebody on Facebook that has reached out to these people and said, I have this order of beneficial mites coming in. It will completely cure your infestation. And the short answer of that is that it won't. Beneficial bugs are something I've used before. I actually really enjoy them. You can see my plants don't have any, and that's because usually they have like these little orange or white bags hanging off them. At least the ones I get are like the copert mites. And they're great, they work really well. But the problem is that they can't beat infestations. And when you're spending money on those bugs, you can't be using chemicals because you're gonna kill the bugs that you're spending money on. So you have to pick one or the other. Am I gonna use bugs or am I gonna use chemicals? And the truth is, in a houseplant collection inside your home, there's nothing that you're contaminating with pesticides. You're not gonna eat these plants because most of them are poisonous anyway to you or your cat or whatever. And I have pets. I use chemicals in my home to treat my houseplants, and I always make sure that my pets aren't near them when I'm treating that. But you can't. It's very unlikely that you're gonna have enough bugs to defeat an infestation of mealybugs or spider mites or thrips. I've tried experimentally before. It doesn't work. Everybody I know that says like, oh, this person reached out to me, I did it, will come back to me a month later and be like, the bugs did nothing, my infestation is worse. And the bugs do work, but it's about scale and the scalability of the bugs. So the bugs work well when they're on a really small scale. And you have maybe a tiny, like I wouldn't call it an infestation, like you get some spider mites in your house and the bugs go, oh, yum, and eat them. But if you have something that's already established and you also have multiple stages from like larvae to full-on flying insects to the different reproductive stages of the insects, that's when things get really complicated, especially with the bugs, because certain mites, and mites are the number one things you'll see, mites, lacewings, even ladybugs sometimes, which I think would be kind of cute to have in my house. But those eat different stages. So some only eat the larval stage, some only eat the adult stage. So when you're trying to figure out what bugs are right for me, it can get really, really complicated. And once again, you cannot use chemicals. Well, you can, but you're gonna kill those beneficial bugs that you just spent $70 on. So you really need to look at so many different factors when you're getting into beneficial bugs. I would say, if you completely pest treat your collection, and you're like, okay, I have no pests, I know it. There probably are some that you can't see, and you wanna do something, a preventative measure. Then what I would do is I would research for you what pest you think you'd be most likely to get. Is it thrips? Is it spider mites? Is it mealybugs? What is it? And then look at the different types of predatory bugs available and order what you think is best for your collection and what you want to prevent. They're amazing, amazing preventatives. I know people that have lots of them and they work great at preventing infestations of bugs in your collection or just infestations on single plants. They're amazing, especially when you get plants like alocasia, which just attract spider mites like the plague, or hoya, which are big and juicy and they love mealybugs. Those are really great. Like if you have big collections of those and you really want to prevent, like if you have hoya, you probably want to prevent mealybugs. You would look for something, I think lacewings, that eat the mealybugs. That's what you would look for. And that's really the gist of how it works. But I just find it's like, once again, importing is not a scam. Selling imported plants isn't a scam. Import flipping is a scam if they're not being honest about it. And I think being honest about beneficial bugs is so important because it is not a miracle cure for your collection. It is not something that you can just stick on your plant and your infection will go away. It is much, much more complicated than that. And sometimes it feels like you need a degree in entomology to actually figure out what's gonna work for your collection. So yeah, I would always recommend that you start with chemicals if you have an infestation. If you want to prevent infestation, then do a lot of research and buy the right bugs. Okay, next up, and this one should just go without saying, but any plant, for the most part, that is sold for more money than it would if it was just the green version, and it is called reverted. Okay, so like a reverted variegated monstera, okay? And they're still selling it for 50, 60 bucks, not how much a regular green monstera costs, okay? That's a scam. Yes, sometimes reverted plants can come back. However, if the plant is not putting out variegated leaves, then that's a reverted plant and it should be sold as a reverted plant, especially if it has no variegation, okay? That's a reverted plant and it should be sold for the price that it's worth, which is just the regular green version. Now, I have seen one plant that reverts a lot is a variegated burl marks. So sometimes you'll see it says like reverted variegated burl marks, but it'll still have the leaves at the bottom that are variegated. I would say that that would be like an intermediate where it could be worth maybe a little bit more. It's not worth a lot more because technically I guess you could cut down the plant and get back to that variegated node and you could try and bring the variegation back, but that's sleazy. I have seen it many times where I've been in places, there's somebody particularly bad that I know for this, but I can't say it. Even though I said I'd spill all the tea, I obviously can't spill all the tea. But you'll walk in and it'll be like reverted Florida Beauty, and it is a Florida green. It's a green plant. There's no variegation in the stem. Maybe 5 generations ago this plant was variegated. Who knows? This is not a variegated plant. So really keep an eye out for that. You're probably not getting a deal on a reverted plant. I'm gonna be honest, you're not. You might think like, oh, they're only charging $20 more for this reverted plant than they are for the regular one. Just buy the regular one or buy the reverted one. If you really wanna risk it, maybe. And if you see something that maybe has some variegation left in the stem still, maybe. But even then, like, it's not really fair to sell that and be like, well, it's like a lottery ticket, you know? It's like, well, I'll charge you $60 for this, and there's the potential that it is worth $80, but it might actually really be worth $5. It's a gamble, and it's not a gamble that I recommend you take unless you think, okay, this is definitely something that I can cut back and get the variegation back. Don't, because almost always it's not. And I've risked plants before. I have bought cuttings that have been rotting. I have bought plants in terrible shape for not cheap, not as cheap as they probably should have been sold for, but I've been cocky and I'm like, I'm gonna take a gamble because I wouldn't be able to afford the healthy version or the super high variegated version of this plant. And that happens, and that's totally acceptable and totally fine. Just be smart about the decisions that you're making. Okay. My last tea that I'm gonna spill. This is something I've seen because sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna look on Etsy and see if I can find plants on Etsy. And Etsy is scammy. At least I know it's better in the States, but oh my God, in Canada, it's bad. Like, it's really bad. I can't even get into everything on here. I don't want to be like too bad, but I'll probably try and maybe stick in some posts that I can find that I think would be relevant to what I'm trying to talk about. But one of the biggest things I see on Etsy is like seeds for everything. Variegated monstera seeds, hoya seeds, all sorts of seeds. Like literally, if it's a rare plant that is trendy right now, you can find an Etsy seller selling the seed of that plant. Do not buy that. It will not be that plant. Maybe it will be, and if it's like, and always look at the reviews and see if it's reputable, if people in your area have bought it, if it's shipped to your area or your country before. Like, look at all these things first. But like, that's just not true. And if you know what the seeds of the plants that you're buying look like, then you're gonna know like okay, this is not, these are just seeds. Like, this is not what I'm getting. The only exception I will say, and this will be clear because you'll see the seller's page and you'll realize that they're being pretty honest about what they're selling, is cacti. Sometimes you can get cacti seeds. Although I can say that when I was looking for my monkey tail cactus, there were many sellers on there that were claiming to sell monkey tail cactus, and they were not monkey tail cactus. And I know because I read people who actually bought the seeds and are like, these either didn't germinate at all or these definitely aren't monkey tail cactus. So there are some reputable cacti seed sellers, and I'm sure there's some reputable seed sellers on Etsy. But when have you ever bought philodendron seeds? Like, it just doesn't happen, like, ever. So just really, really be careful of that. Like I said, there's always exceptions to the rule on every single one of these. There are people that responsibly resale imports, lots of them. There are also people that don't, and they flip them. There are some apps that can maybe identify plants, but most can't, and even the good ones aren't really that accurate. There are beneficial insects for your collection that will make a big difference and will make your life a lot easier, but they're expensive and they should be used wisely. Like seeds and these things on Etsy, I just like, buyer beware, you know? Look at it. Look at the reviews. Look at how much shipping costs. Just look at every little facet, every little piece of information before you make those purchases. And I say that because you might be like, well, it's a small purchase. If you're into collecting rare plants, I promise you it is not a small purchase. And sometimes you think like, oh, well, this plant is a couple $100 and I can buy seeds of it for $20 including shipping on Etsy. And then that's fine, and that could be a risk you're willing to take. But at the same time, like, if those aren't what you're looking for, you're just gambling and your money is going nowhere. You're just getting some random seeds that may or may not even germinate. So overall, that's like my overall topic of what I think are the biggest plant scams. I can't say it enough. There are always exceptions to the rule. There are people that do all of these things. There are people that sell seeds. There are good beneficial insects. Like I said, that's a whole other thing and it's very complicated. I don't know enough about it to tell you all about it. But what I'm telling you is to learn about it. There are apps. It's just, be smart, be free, buy plants, and don't be stupid with your money so that you can save money and buy more expensive plants or a beautiful red stick cabinet or nicer pots or whatever you want to get. But just be smart with your money. Be smart about scams. Know that every hobby has crusty, dusty people that are trying to scam you. And the plant community is no different than that. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you for letting me ramble on for however long this video ends up being. Like it, subscribe to me because I'm so totally rad and I'm going to talk about plants and you can listen to me talk about plants. I don't know. Comment what scams you think I should have mentioned, or if you think that I'm wrong. But if I'm wrong, comment, tell me. And yeah, just have a nice week. Also, thank you for all the love on my last video. My plant tour will come out eventually. Who knows when I'm feeling better. And yes, thank you.